the podcast where comics are my shtick. And this week's episode, I actually have quite a few comics to talk about. Shocker. And I'm not lying like I was last week, where I said I was going to talk about Savage Dragon, and then I ran out of time, and I didn't want the episode to be like 2 hours long or something. This week I'm actually talking about Savage Dragon. That's why the title is Savage Dragon Begins. How embarrassing would it be if, if that changes? As always, this episode is brought to you by my Patreon and Etsy, blaketwild.etsy.com, where you can buy my physical comics, and Patreon, where you can see my comics and read them for as little as $3. You can read the entirety of my 60s Silver Age love letter, The Custodians, Agents of Cross. All 50-plus pages are available for view on there. And Destructo Boy, my fun for all ages sci-fi zany little comic series that I did. I'm posting pages from that every week. What else? I need to be posting original art on there that I'm doing. I just haven't had a bunch of time recently, and commentaries and exclusive stuff on there as well. Check it out. And let's get ready for everybody's favorite new segment that I introduced a couple episodes ago during the live stream, The Crow's Nest, where I discuss the crow-related news and topics. This came out from Variety just the other day. The director of the original Crow is upset that there's a remake because he says that it should be Brandon Lee's legacy and you shouldn't make another one. Okay, well, Brandon Lee had nothing to do with The Crow, so that, aside from starring in it and dying on the set, so that makes no sense to begin with. It's not like Brandon Lee was the creator of The Crow, and now he's like, this director was his best friend, and now he's like trying to defend the character or something. The Crow was a comic from the late 80s, early 90s, right? I think that's when it came out. I never read it. I've never read The Crow. I don't know what the fuck The Crow is. That's what makes this segment so entertaining, I'm sure. But why? He was apparently quoted saying that Brandon Lee died making it. No shit. We're all aware that he was shot and killed by, what, like a blank or something along those lines that didn't work right? I doubt if Brandon Lee had lived and continued his film career, I highly doubt he would be this upset about The Crow being rebooted. A franchise he really had nothing to do with, aside from just starring in it. It's not like, I've never heard anybody say, oh yeah, Brandon Lee was a huge Crow fan or something like that. Maybe he was, but who knows? He didn't have anything to do with it. It's creation. He doesn't own the rights to it. The fucking whoever has, I don't know who made it. I don't know who made the Crow comics, or the original or the newer ones that came out after the film. But that is just a ridiculous sentiment that I feel like is just... This feels like a way that I can get people to talk to me. Because what the fuck has the director of The Crow done since that movie? Where somebody died. Apparently, like, on his watch, or was it this other film that he died on? I can't remember. I've never seen The Crow. I haven't seen any of them. But that concludes this brief little episode topic of The Crow's Nest. Moving on to some video game news. Only one thing. Marvel 1943 Rise of HYDRA has released a story trailer, which just means the cutscenes, and it's like establishing what the story is, I guess. It looks quite cool. It's very interesting. And then I was excited to learn that it's also directed by the woman who, I think it's a woman, who did the Uncharted games? Amy something? Unless I just completely misread that name. They worked on the Uncharted games. Uncharted 2, I guess, is the most popular one. I've only ever played 3, and I really enjoyed it. I don't know how much they had to do with 3, but that that breeds good news, I suppose. I saw a list of other video games that they worked on. It all seemed like pretty top notch stuff. The voice acting sounds great. The Captain America, I really dig his look. I like that sort of leather double-breasted coat jacket thingy he has going on. I like the Captain America design. I'm not really a fan of the Black Panther design. I don't like when the ears are too curved, like when they look like, the Japanese like ear headphones, or like when people do that with their hands. I don't like that design. It just looks weird. I get that's what a panther ears looks like. It looks more like an actual panther. I get that. I just don't like it. I like it when they're a little more pointy. I don't like the curved ears that have the little indentation to be like you're not hearing out of that. It's, if anything, it just makes the helmet more uncomfortable. But I guess it's not T'Chaka, or it might be T'Chaka, or it might be T'Challa, depending on where they go with this universe. But it's Black Panther, it's Captain America, Steve Rogers, who I realized something watching that trailer is that he sounds young, which makes sense because he was what? Like in his early 20s or so when he became Captain America? And the voice actor, he sounds, for some reason to me, younger than Chris Evans. I don't know if he is or not. But that got me thinking about the MCU Captain America and the just difference in age to begin with. I guess, you can just chalk it all up to the super soldier serum. But I never really considered that. Like, Captain America, even when he gets thawed out, he's at most, like, 25, right? Like, he's not that old. Who else is in this? It's Captain America, it's Black Panther, it's a, Dora Milaje, I guess, a Wakandan woman, and a U.S. soldier who I'm guessing is probably going to be Nick Fury, or Nick Fury Sr., if they want to go that route. I can't really think of anybody else. There is a black member of the Howling Commandos, but I doubt it's him. No way they would just bother. I doubt that they would chalk that. Or, I doubt that they would cut that deep to have the one black guy from the Howling Commandos that didn't, nobody really knows, instead of just going with Nick Fury was in World War II. This is set in 43. It's Nick Fury. He hasn't lost his eye yet. He still has, he doesn't have the white hair on his temples. He's still nice and fairly young. Maybe they'll go with the ultimate version of Nick Fury in this game halfway through. That being, he also has like the super soldier serum. Like he was the first. Oh no, is that ultimate Nick Fury? Yeah, because they sort of mix it with like Isaiah Bradley and Ultimate Nick Fury, if I remember correctly. I can't remember. I definitely don't need to reread Ultimate Origins, but it looks fun. It looks like it's a neat idea. Looking forward to killing some Nazis in both this and the Indiana Jones game coming out. Movie news. Alien Romulus got its first trailer release. I didn't even realize this was going to be a thing until like a month ago when I saw people posting posters and shit for it. I thought I got canned along with whatever else they were working on previously. I had no idea they were making this film. It is from Fede something or other. I can't remember his name. The guy who did the 2013 Evil Dead film, which I hate. And what else? There was something else that I recognize, but I can't remember. It's a fine horror movie, that Evil Dead 2013 film. I just don't think it's a good Evil Dead film. I did an episode where I discussed Sam Raimi films sometime before my Multiverse of Madness review episode. So you can go check that out if you're that invested and interested in hearing my thoughts on that 2013 movie. But this one looks fucking gnarly. It looks like they just recreated the spaceship from Alien Isolation, like just those slow panning shots down the corridors and the halls. It looks exactly like the Isolation levels, or how I've never played it. I don't know. When those two characters are running down the hallway and one of them, the guy tosses a flare back, that looks just like the video game. So that's cool that they're taking inspiration from what people like deem as being one of the best games of the past 10 years, I think. Everybody fucking loves that game. What else? The deluge flood of face huggers just rocking in. That was fucking insane. I've never seen that many face huggers in my life. So clearly this is going to be set on some kind of space station, I'd imagine. So maybe a derelict ship is found. Maybe Wayland Yutani is bringing them here to just like transport them to another spot, and it gets, the shipment gets fucked up, or there is like some sort of research going on, whatever the fuck Wayland Yutani's up to this time. Those wacky Wayland Yutani. It's gonna be a fucking bloodbath, man. Holy shit. I cannot wait, because God almighty, to have those last couple Alien movies sucked. I'm glad that Ridley Scott's off doing his historical biopics or whatever. Although I guess you could say that Prometheus was also a historical biopic, because that one engineer was apparently Jesus. Or no, I don't think that one was. I think he did it. Ridley Scott did say that in his universe, Jesus is an engineer. But it looks really good. I am very excited. I don't remember when it comes out. Pretty soon. I want to say April maybe, but I'm not too sure. But it looks fucking awesome. I cannot wait to go see it alone, because my wife could not handle it. More moving news. This is all film stuff from here on out until I get to the Savage Dragon. There's apparently going to be a Teen Titans live-action film that is in the works, and it's going to be written by Ana Nogueira, who has also wrote the Supergirl movie, which isn't even, like, there's no news about that aside from her writing it and Millie Alcock starring in it. So, it must be fucking good if they're already giving her another movie. So I am even more excited about the Supergirl film, and I am very excited for this Teen Titans live-action movie. I trust James Gunn. I trust Peter Safran. They're the guys who seemingly got her on the Supergirl movie, and are seemingly the guys who were so impressed with what she did on that they're like, fuck. Here! Take more young characters and have them go on fun adventures. So I'm looking forward to that. Teen Titans, always a fun story. Silver Age books were neat. I wonder which route they're going to take it. I wonder if it's going to be a completely original team in terms of roster. Originally, it was Robin, Wonder Girl, Kid Flash, and Aqualad. And then eventually, it became the new Teen Titans, which is more or less the team that everybody recognizes. I would like to see some more obscure characters. That'd just be neat to have just some characters that we haven't really seen. Well, we haven't seen any of these characters in live action, aside from Robin? Is that it? I'm talking film here. Obviously, Kid Flash is on the Flash movie, and there's there's the whole Titans TV show, too. Who the fuck cares about that? That's a shitty, dark, edgy universe. I don't know, it could be really neat. There's literally nothing else about it. They just made this one announcement, but I'm looking forward to it. Bill Hader, along with a couple other people, have been cast in the Cat in the Hat animated film. Bill Hader will reprise his role as the cat. He last played the Cat in the Hat in a SNL sketch for like 10, 15 years ago. It's fucking funny. I can't imagine this film's going to be any good. It's probably going to be very similar to the Illumination, Grinch film starring Benedict Cumberbatch, which was a fucking awful movie. And I can't see this being very good. I guess I'm trying to think of what animated Dr. Seuss films are actually good aside from like the originals. I guess the one with Danny DeVito is liked well enough. The Lorax. I've never actually seen it. I've only seen clips and bits of it here and there. Horton Hears a Who? Do people like that one? I don't know. People definitely didn't like the Grinch movie because it was bad. Is that it? I think that might be it. And then, of course, this one, The Cat in the Hat, which everybody hated the Michael Myers version. I was a bit disappointed when I saw it wasn't going to be live action. So I wanted to see Bill Hader be a live action Cat in the Hat. But I'm talking about this whole Cat in the Hat movie thing way longer than I have any right to. So let's go on to Ready Player 2! Hey, remember that stupid fucking book where it's just a dude jerking off to the 80s every goddamn page and referencing how good the 80s was because he was a kid in the 80s and how the 80s is the best? And then he's like, kids now love the 80s. It's the future. It's VR. Society sucks, but in the 80s it was nice. It's getting a sequel. Well, it did get a sequel. That book got a sequel, I think, called Ready Player 2. And I'm pretty sure I haven't read either of them. I think I've only seen Jenny Nicholson's review and maybe someone else's review of the book. And neither of them sound good at all. They both come across as just shitty storytelling. Anyway, Ready Player 2 is being made with Steven Spielberg not returning to the director's chair. Instead, he's just going to be producing it. I never enjoyed that movie. I saw it. I think I saw it when I was still doing my movie reviews on the channel. I think there is a Smokey at the Movies or whatever that review show was called. From like 6, 7, 8 years ago, however long ago that was. You can probably still, well, I know you can still find it if it's there. I haven't deleted them. But yeah, if you want to find out my thoughts on the first, Ready Player 1, then check out that video. I want to say I reviewed it alongside, let me think, Ready Player 1. I'm going to say it was probably Isle of Dogs and Rampage, maybe? Rampage starring Dwayne Johnson? I don't remember. But it's fine. It's an alright film. It looks neat. It looks fairly fine, I guess. My favorite part of that first movie is how they play. So it's such my favorite part of the movie that I still bring it up. I brought it up just the other night when I was talking with my wife. I love how they have that gorgeous love interest girl. I can't remember who plays her. But everybody acts like she's this horrible abomination freak because she is supposed to have this giant birthmark over her face that looks like a burn victim or burn stain or something. But in the movie, it's just pretty flat looking, slightly like darkish red, maroon makeup. And she just looks fine. She's gorgeous. But everybody's acting like, oh, you're a monster. That just always made me laugh. But that is... What else happened in that movie? I don't even remember how that movie ended. What was the purpose of that movie? What happens in Ready Player 1? There's that guy who dies. Oh, yeah, the guy dies. Man dies. He leaves video game nerds a quest or like a scavenger hunt because that guy loved the 80s. And it's an 80s themed scavenger hunt. And that scavenger hunt leads to money or royalty rights or like the ownership of the game or something stupid. I think that's what happened. I remember the hotel from The Shining was in it. I think Iron Giant is in it at a certain point. who cares? Really, who gives a shit? I don't. This player's not ready. Okay. Something else that's getting a continuation of sorts, more of a reboot, is Little Shop of Horrors, don't stop. I bought a wine, Little Shop of Horrors. Little Shop of Horrors is getting a reboot from Joe Dante, Roger Corman, and Charles S. Haas, who is apparently working as the writer for the screenplay. Roger Corman, of course, did the original film. Joe Dante, fantastic director. My favorite film of his is Small Soldiers. And I believe he also did Captain America: The First Avenger. Great director. Is he the one that came out with like a crazy horror stop motion a couple years ago? I still need to watch that. But I love Little Shop of Horrors. I wonder if this is going to be a musical. It would have to be, right? Like, how are you going to do Little Shop of Horrors and not have it be a musical? The film will be titled Little Shop of Halloween Horrors and is intended to start a new franchise. I knew I was forgetting something, and it was that. That just ruined my excitement. Little Shop of Halloween Horrors. What does that mean? Like, it's gonna be a Spirit Halloween store? Because there was already a Spirit Halloween horror movie that came out a couple years ago. Little Shop of Halloween Horrors is intended to start a new franchise. A new franchise in what way? Like, Little Shop of Christmas Horrors? Little Shop of Easter Horrors? What does that mean? Are they all going to be Little Shop of Halloween Horrors? Is it going to be like the Goosebumps? Where it's like, oh, actually, these things are all coming to life and they're real. Is it going to be like a horror version of Nightmare at the Museum? Nightmare at the Museum? Why didn't anybody do that? Why hasn't that been a thing yet? Instead of people are making fucking Winnie the Pooh horror movies and whoever else, Mickey Mouse horror movies, make a fucking Nightmare at the Museum movie. That would be fucking sick. There's just goddamn dinosaur bones running around eating people, and like they're getting fucking impaled on the rib of a goddamn T-Rex after it somehow manages to swallow the person through its bones. What else is normally at a museum? The fucking Neanderthals are just smashing shit and fucking pillaging and raping or whatever they did. Museum. What else is at a museum? The giant whale hanging from the ceiling? I don't know. It collapses to the ground and just wiggling there. That'd be a fucking crazy movie. You thought Night at the Museum was crazy. Wait until you see Nightmare at the Museum. Moving on to James Bond news. Apparently, there's a rumor going around that Aaron Taylor Johnson has been offered the role of James Bond. He's expected to sign the contracts within a few days. Aaron Taylor Johnson, Quicksilver of the MCU. So Quicksilver is definitely not coming back if that's true. Sorry, Quicksilver heads. Silverados. I don't know. He was also, if he does become James Bond, I feel like this happened solely because of his appearance in Bullet Train. One of the best films of the past couple of years. Great action film. I absolutely loved it. Fantastic cast all around. He plays a British assassin. He's pretty much a sillier James Bond. Or he's pretty much played, he's almost exactly played like a James Bond in a silly situation. He's also going to be playing Kraven. The guy that I am stark Kraven mad for. I cannot wait for Kraven to come out. Especially with the success of Madam Web. But, I don't care. I never cared for James Bond. I think I've only ever seen one James Bond film, and that was Skyfall. In the Skyfall, the grumbles. I've seen bits and pieces of the others. I just never cared, never had any interest in watching James Bond for some reason. I don't know why. I remember I torrented the entire series up to whatever one was before Skyfall, when around the time Skyfall came out, and with the intent to watch them, and they're still sitting on my hard drive. Unopened. Unplayed. But I think he could be good, especially based on his character in Bullet Train. Something more exciting, though, is the Acolyte official trailer coming on Disney Plus in June, I think. You know me. I love Star Wars. I want more Star Wars, even though I haven't watched The Bad Batch Season 3. I just haven't had time to actually just sit down and properly watch a series like that recently. Because I don't want to have to put it on in the background just because I love Star Wars so much. I really want to be able to focus all my attention on it and just sit there and enjoy it. Bad Batch. No, I'm not talking about Bad Batch. We're talking about the Acolyte. The Acolyte stars a larger cast of characters than I expected there to be. The most shocking one is Daphne Keane, who I expected. She plays a what are they called? A Thelan. The ones that have like the little things sticking out of their heads, but they're not antennae. There's something else. You see them throughout the Clone Wars TV show. I was like, oh my god, they actually made her a Thelan thingy. I couldn't remember what the name was, so I had to look it up when I saw the trailer, but I recognized them because I'm a true fan. I thought that she would be closer to playing the first of all, I was just shocked that she's an alien. But I thought she was going to be playing the role of like that assassin that we see. I think her name is May, M-A-E, based on the action figures that they announced. I thought she would be more in that role. For some reason. I don't know why. I don't know why I looked at Daphne Keane and I was like, villain. You're going to be evil. But her and I think the Jedi Master, what's his name? He's from Squid Game. He was the main guy in there. I can't remember his name. Great actor. They're the only two I really recognize. It looks crazy. It's during the High Republic era, which is about 100. I think it ends around 100 years before Phantom Menace, which is around the time that this one takes place. And it starts like thousands of years before, Phantom Menace. There's an entire book series. There's comics. There's audiobooks of the books. I'm surprised they haven't done a High Republic video game yet. But I never got into it. I never got into the High Republic stuff. It seemed very esoteric. It seems very esoteric, I should say. And at this point, I doubt I'm ever really going to get into it. My favorite era of Star Wars has always been where the Bad Batch actually is right now, which is the 20-year time span between Episode 3 and Episode 4, a little more into, Episode 6 or so. Era of the Empire. I always enjoyed that setting better, maybe because I just really dug A New Hope when I saw it as a kid, and that just strikes me as just a very visually striking time. Everything is very dilapidated and totalitarian, I guess. But I love seeing the different eras of Star Wars. I can't wait to see how far the Jedi have to fall. Because the prequels and the Clone Wars, they just exhibit the hubris of the Jedi. And just how they're so fucking full of themselves, and they just lost touch completely with any sort of reality. Which is why it's such a shame that Ahsoka was coaching Luke, because she was raised in that time period. So when I was watching The Mandalorian or whatever show it was that Ahsoka was talking to Luke in, I was like, no, Luke, don't listen to her. You're gonna fail. I look forward to seeing Jedi actually doing things, I guess, because at this point there's still there's some sort of big fucking like gang war or some shit that's happening in the old Republic era or the High Republic. I'm not sure how that event in the comics and the books sort of correlates to where this is. It's probably well beforehand, but the High Republic era is when Jedi were actually doing stuff. They're actually helping people, rather than what we see in the Clone Wars, what we see in the prequels, what we see in Tales of the Jedi, specifically the Count Dooku story with young Qui-Gon. So it'll be nice to see the Jedi actually be fairly altruistic without like having to wring their arm to get them to do it, you know? Without having to fucking pull their teeth out and make them be kind. But I'm really looking forward to it. Not much was given away in the trailer aside from the sort of core cast, this Jedi team, which are made up of a master, a knight. Daphne Keene plays a Padawan. There's the Wookiee, who I think is a master. There's the woman, the older woman, I think. And then there's that weird assassin. I hope to God that if Darth Plagueis is in this, because Darth Plagueis in the old lore, Darth Plagueis is Palpatine's Sith Master. He was a Mun, or a Mun, I think is how, I don't remember how they pronounce it in the book. M-U-N. It's those, the banking clan guys. We see one of them in episode 3. He's very tall. He kind of looks like a Kaminoan, but his head is like a thumb. Darth Plagueis was a Mun. And I'd wager a guess and say that they're fairly long-lived, because it seems like pretty much all alien species that aren't humans, and the occasional human, are pretty long-lived. Jocasta Nu, the librarian from episode 2 at the Jedi Temple that tells Obi-Wan, just super bitchy, oh, well, if it's not in the system, then it clearly doesn't exist. Get the fuck out of here. And she pushes Obi-Wan out of the way. She's like 107 or something, I think. So God knows what's going on in the universe. But anyway, I hope if they do bring Darth Plagueis into this, that they make him a Mun. I kind of hope that they don't, just so I can keep that little bit, that fucking diamond gem that is the Darth Plagueis novel, just in my mind, and just, you know, okay, well, that's what headcanon, that's what happens, because I doubt we're gonna really see it that much. So why doesn't it have to happen the same way? But it would be neat if they sort of alluded to, you know, things that would set up that novel in 100-something years, less than 100 years, because it covers the course of Palpatine's life for the most part, from when he was like early 20s to whenever he becomes Chancellor. It's like, is that about right? I think so. I think it goes up to just right before episode 1. But yeah, I really don't have anything else to say regarding that, because there's just, you know, there's not a lot that really stands out in the trailer in terms of like, oh, well, that could be a plot element, that could be something, which is nice. I don't want to know. I want to be surprised at what we see. So I'm really looking forward to it. And now we get to this. Well, not these, because I have not read these yet. I should have had the other one in here. Book 1, Volume 1 of the Savage Dragon Archives, which collects issues 1 through 21 of the long-running Image Comics series by Eric Larson, Savage Dragon. What is Savage Dragon? You may know Savage Dragon from a panel or a couple, like a page or a couple panels that happened about 10 years ago, where they're having super sex, and everybody's like, wow, look, Eric Larson's a super huge pervert, blah, blah, blah. That was like like I said, that was one page out of the whole thing. It's the same thing that kind of happened to Stephen King with the whole orgy scene in It. It's one tiny scene that happens and really stands out, honestly. I'm not saying it wasn't bad, but it takes over the genius and the amazement of the true, like, the entirety of it. There's a weird gestalt going on with that. But Savage Dragon is the longest running comic series that I can think of, American comic series currently coming out and still releasing, created entirely by one person. Sure, Todd McFarlane can fucking pay Guinness to come by and give him a record, because that's how it works. The Guinness Book of World Records is a fucking huge scam. He can do that all he wants. He has over 300 issues of Spawn coming out. But Todd McFarlane did not make over 300 issues of Spawn over the past 30-something years. Erik Larsen, on the other hand, has written, illustrated, sometimes colored. I don't think he colors that often, especially now. I don't think he's really colored many of the books. But he has written and illustrated every issue of the Savage Dragon. There was an issue that Jim Lee did when they were doing their crossover month in the 90s. The different Image founders, they worked on each other's books. Erik Larsen was so just like matter-of-fact and obsessed with I don't know why I said matter-of-fact. Was so obsessed with making sure that every issue was by himself that he went back and redid that issue all himself. And it was a far better story than whatever Jim Lee did. But Erik Larsen, I've known about him for years, but I've never gotten into Savage Dragon. I've read a couple bits here and there. I read the first issue, the 3-issue miniseries years ago. And I, too, was one of those people that was like, oh, it's just some weird, pervy, dumb, mindless book that nothing really happens in, and it just keeps going on, which is pretty much what happened to Cerebus, the previously long-standing 300 issues comic series made by one person who went fucking insane and is a crazy, sexist, bigoted piece of shit. But I digress. So I was one of those people. And then, there's the channel Cartoonist Kayfabe. They started covering the Savage Dragon things. And then, for whatever reason, this past month and a half or so, I just started listening and watching every Erik Larsen interview I could get my hands on. I have heard the same stories so many goddamn times, I'll tell you that. Because for some reason, all these fucking interviewers just ask the same fucking questions. Check out the Savage Fincast. That is definitely the best, because they are Hope to Die Savage Dragon fans who have been doing a Savage Dragon-based podcast every month for like 10 years. And they've had Erik on like 15 times, maybe more. So, they have a rapport. But I started reading Savage Dragon again. I should have brought the first volume. I started watching all these interviews and listening to Erik Larsen speak and just talk about the characters. And he's resoundingly the best of the original founders. Just as a person and a cartoonist. They all say Mark Silvestri was the best artist. Sure, Mark Silvestri's art is incredible. It looks fantastic. It just does not have the energy that... I was about to say Jack Kirby. It does not have the energy that Erik Larsen's does. The Image founders. Who are the big two names that you can think of? Rob Liefeld, Todd McFarlane, probably. How big are those guys' egos? Erik Larsen is the fucking humblest dude that I've seen. And I'll admit, I'm the most humble person that I know. I'll be the first to admit that. But Erik Larsen probably has me beat. He's constantly referring to himself as a caveman. He's just the way he speaks just has none of this charade of superiority like the other guys have in interviews that I see. Like, he's just a dude who wants to make comics, who loves comics. And that's what makes him happy. That's what he's always wanted to do. He was making comics as like a little kid, fucking folding over sheets of paper and stapling them together, and making full-on comic books as a child. It is in his blood to make comics, and that is what he wants to do. That is how he lives, and that is just such an aspect to like aspire to, is that he is literally the embodiment of do what you love. Of course, the full saying is, and you won't work a day in your life, but I'm sure he'd argue against that. I'm sure it definitely feels like work trying to get these fucking issues done. Currently, he's at about 270 or so, I think. 269, 270, somewhere around there. I did start reading with 266. I started purchasing issues, which stars the original Dragon's son. They move from Canada back to America into San Francisco. I figured that was a good starting point for me to get in for the contemporary stories. But I loved hearing Erik Larsen speak. I just loved how down-to-earth he is. Just how much he's into just the creation of comics, especially. So I've just been listening to him just this past month and a half or so talk about Savage Dragon, talk about making comics, talking about his history in comics, and it was just a huge inspiration to me working on my own comics, The Custodians. I've been listening to that while I've been penciling these last 2 issues. Because my God, has issue 5 taken me a long time. It's a lot of work going into that issue 5. There's a lot going on. But just hearing his passion was just so inspirational, and I just loved it. And I was like, you know what? Now I'm going to do it. I'm finally going to do it. I'm going to read Savage Dragon, all 200 and something issues of it. And then I saw that it's collected very few collections. There's volumes of it, like traditional trade paperbacks, but they're a lot smaller, less condensed, and they go for more money, and they're not as up to date as this one is. And there's also the Ultimate collections of it, which are big fancy, sort of like, if you're familiar with the Absolute collections, which has like back matter in the back and all this stuff. And those are great. I probably will pick those up in the future, but right now I just need to read Savage Dragon. And God bless whoever the marketing genius was to come out with Savage Dragon Archives, because I have now issues 1 up to, I think it's, oh my gosh, this is 14 pounds right here, I think is what it came out to, with the, I think, I weighed all of them, and with the first volume, it was 15 pounds, I want to say, on my scale. So I'd imagine this is about 14. Yeah, so I have issues 1 to 250 of Savage Dragon. I'm afraid it's going to break this fucking rickety-ass table that I found. Yeah, I did find that table. I found it down by my apartment dumpster and hauled it back up here. But it's not very supportive. But I have all of that to read through. 30 years of comics. And that's fucking, like I said earlier, he's only at, there's been what, like about 19 issues since this last one right down here. Number 9. Oh, wait, number 10. God damn it, now I gotta pick up this fucking stack again. Ugh. Okay, careful. I don't want this table to collapse under the weight of all that dragon. And so I am just very excited to get into this finally. I started the podcast talking about a beloved comic series of mine, the Anno Senti Daredevil series, and I'm not ending the podcast talking about this. I'm continuing the podcast talking about what has quickly also become a beloved series of mine. I have immediately become a fan of Savage Dragon. Cross my little heart and hope to die, Savage Dragon fan. Because it's so different from anything else that Image was putting out back in the early days. You know, Erik Larsen was a founder of Image. If you compare the first issue, either one, because he did a 3-issue limited series and then he did the proper series, oh my god, it's leagues ahead of anything those other motherfuckers were doing. It has actual story. It has actual elements of a story. Eric Larson understands storytelling so sufficiently and so succinctly, and it's just worked so well in his tenure on the Dragons comic. It is fantastic. And obviously he would have to understand story structure and storytelling. It makes sense. He's been reading these comics since he was like 4 years old. He's fucking worked in comics since he was like in his 20s, I think. So it makes sense that he can do over 200 issues of it, almost 300, all by himself. I don't know why I winked. But with that out of the way, let's get started and talk about Savage Dragon. If you've been with the podcast from the start, you'll probably remember how I did the Daredevil one, which is where I went issue by issue and I just had like bullet point notes to just discuss. This one was a lot harder because, as you can see on the back, I've always loved this design for collections, and omnibuses usually do it, where it has each cover. It shows this. Inside, however, there is no distinction between where an issue stops and starts. So you gotta kind of infer and use the context clues of how the pages are laid out. It's, for the most part, it was difficult for me to do early on in these issues, but once I got to about issue 5 or 6, because I've only gotten to issue 6. I know, right? I have, what, 254, no, 100, no, wait, yeah. What am I at? 244 issues to go before I finish all this. So it was a little difficult, and the fact is not made easier because pages are rearranged in these archive editions as well. And I think the other trades, they reworked how pages were laid out just to make the story work better. Again, going back to what I was saying about Eric Larson and story structure. And yeah, it works so much better for the most part. There's a couple things here and there early on I've noticed where it's happening, things are happening, let's go. It's an even more cut rate, fast-paced, like, just story that's going on. With very little time to breathe. But now at this point, with issue 6, which technically would be issue 9 if you count the first 3 that were the miniseries, it's starting to, I think, he's really starting to get his footing with how he wants to go about this. But let's see, where are my notes? There we go. But I was able to work out, for the most part, how these things are working. But I'm just going to go kind of issue by issue. The next part is definitely going to probably be a lot easier now that I know really where I'm at. And it becomes a little clearer where these stories are stopping and starting in terms of how the original issues were. So let's get right into things. Savage Dragon. This green fellow right here, this is probably the best one to show. That is the dragon. His first name's not Savage. Not like Vandal. He is an amnesiac who woke up naked in a burning field. Holy shit, what better way to start a book is there? How cool is that? This badass Hulk-looking motherfucker wakes up jacked and just bulging with muscles and completely naked, surrounded by fire. He wakes up to just a horrible, violent world. He can remember most things. He can remember pretty much everything about the world and history and society, except who he is. And obviously they get to that very far in the future, but at this point, no one knows. The world is filled with superheroes and super freaks, and for the most part, at least in Chicago, it's seems like the freaks, as they call them, the villains for the most, for all intents and purposes, super villains, they are overnumbering the heroes. These first issues really exhibit how shitty this world is becoming. The police force is on the ropes. They cannot deal with the it's essentially the cartel for the most part. Overlord, who is the overarching villain for the most of the Chicago stories, it's kind of like Pablo Escobar, where he controls everything. And while, yes, there are still police, a lot of them are probably going to be dirty. Those who aren't are in a losing war to stop these criminals. And it felt very Watchmen light. Like, just it's I really want to interview Eric Larson. I hope I get the chance to, because I would love to. But it feels just very much like he took that premise that Marvel Comics had for the longest time and still tries to maintain, which is, we're the world outside your window, Excelsior, you know. Marvel Comics is the world outside of your window. Eric Larson took that and ran with it to the extremist point, which is Savage Dragon ages in real time. For a month of the comics, it's a month in the real world. Other way around is what I meant to say. A month in our world is a month for them. So the Watchmen aspect I felt was very in line with, oh yeah, this is a real world. This is 91-ish, 1992, because there's a year time skip between when Savage Dragon, I keep calling him Savage Dragon, between when Dragon wakes up and when he is on the police force with Chicago PD. So early 90s is when this begins. There are so many crazy things that I did not know about this comic series. Specifically, how if it was released today, so many sad, pathetic motherfuckers online would be bitching about, oh my god, it's so political. Why is liberal Larson is putting more of his politics into comics? Which people still do to him. But, like, for the most part, the complaints that I see, very rarely, because if you're reading Savage Dragon, you're a diehard Savage Dragon fan. The complaints that I did see are like, yeah, he puts too much of his own politics in it. Oh, he's making fun of Trump. How dare he? Motherfucker, it's like Superman. Early Savage Dragon is very much early Superman, where he's this big, gruff, sort of brute who's also a gentle giant if he needs, like, you know, when you don't piss him off. And he's fucking dealing with shitty people. In the first, like, issue or two, there's a police officer called Officer Niesman. It's spelled, it's an ironic name. Niseman. I'm saying Niesman just because that sounds like a real name, rather than saying, hey, Officer Nice Man, you're a real piece of shit, which he is. He, after Dragon goes on the police force. So here's what happened. I'm getting ahead of myself. Dragon is found by a police officer, I can't remember, a lieutenant maybe? Yeah, I think he's a lieutenant, named Frank Darling, who in my head I read as being played by Keith David. He finds him, and Dragon is amnesiac. Amnesiac, and he gets the Dragon title by the nurses at the hospital that he's that he's in, nicknaming him that because he's green and he has the big fin on top, and they're like, oh yeah, he's the Dragon. So that's just the name that he goes with. He's like Cher, he just has the one. Eventually he gets out of the hospital, and Frank is like, hey, my cousin, he like owns a shipping yard down in the Chicago docks. He needs some help. Why don't you go work for him? He has like a little loft that you can stay in, blah, blah, blah. And eventually some super freaks attack and are sticking up the cousin, Frank's cousin, for money. Dragon stops them. The freaks come back, blow up the entire warehouse out of retribution for them getting arrested and killing the cousin. And Dragon is like, fuck me, man. I guess I'm not having a quiet life. I gotta be a cop. So they just fucking fast forward him through police training, and he becomes an officer. After that happens, Dragon is introduced to the main police characters at the Chicago headquarters of the cops. And like I was saying, it's Officer Niesman is one of them, who says some horrible shit. He is a motherfucker who imposes his will on people because he thinks he has that power over them, because he has a little badge on his chest and he is a cop. He is the epitome of all the bad cops. You know what they say? One spoiled apple ruins the bunch. Is that what they say? And he is just the worst. He's racist. He has been on probation so many times because he just brutalizes people. He gets the shit out of them. He kills people. But he's still on the force because you gotta protect that thin blue line. And Dragon looks him straight in the face and says, quote, "You think that might makes right? That wearing a badge automatically makes all of your actions correct." And then he brings up Rodney King and continues and says, "This isn't about getting to beat up citizens because you don't like the way they look. We're supposed to be the good guys. Start acting like it." And then he grabs Niesman by the gonads and just squeezes him, and fucking he falls to the floor. Now, here's the thing that reason I bring that up, because one, it was a shock to me that just right off the bat, we're getting that in this comic that ostensibly starts as a book for kids. God damn, that is some heavy stuff to put in there. You're immediately talking about police brutality, racism, bigotry. And you bring up Rodney King. It's something that happened about a year two ago at the time of this first book coming out. But I never have seen anybody bring that fact up online. And it's either one, people just, there's not a lot of readers who are really arguing about it. Or two, the people who read Savage, this is what I think. I don't know what the core audience group is for Savage Dragon. I can't imagine it's a lot of people around my age. I imagine it's people probably in their 40s to 50s. Because they were the ones that were teenagers and kids reading these books when they were coming out in the 90s. And those who stuck around with them, I think that they probably have a similar mindset to Eric Larson in terms of society and politics. And those who didn't either fell off when they realized it, when they got old enough, or they just stopped reading the series. But those people, if there are, this is a somewhat hypothetical scenario that I'm proposing. Those people that did start this book off and start reading it when they were kids, and then eventually started complaining about how political it got. It's because they were kids, right? Because it's always been political. Right off the bat, it's political. You know, that boogie word, political. It has, like I said, he brings up Rodney King, a man who was savagely beaten by 4 cops in LA that led to massive riots. And was like the first, not the first, but a majorly publicized and filmed police brutality. And it's got to be the fact that these people, if they do complain about it, and they were like, yeah, why doesn't he, you know, the comics used to be good, and then he got political. It's purely just going to be, you didn't realize it because you're a kid. Reading this series made me realize something about the cartoonist kayfabe guys. And a lot of the people that idolize the early Image stuff. Because, like I was saying before, this is leagues ahead of the early Image stuff. Spawn's not talking about Rodney King. Spawn's not talking about police brutality. Youngblood sure as shit isn't. I don't know what Youngblood's talking about other than cool pictures. Shadowhawk had AIDS. So I guess that's something. But this series just has so much more going for it at a time where comics did not need to do that. And that's why I love Eric Larson as a creator. That's why he is such an inspiration. That is why he just stands out wholly amongst the Image guys. Jim Lee wasn't doing it. Mark Silvestri wasn't doing it. They were drawing cool pictures, making easy money. They were fucking full on into the speculator market. Rub the Blood. That is a real comic book Rob Liefeld put out. But Eric Larson, he didn't have a stable of guys at a studio. It's just him. He would get, he'd ship out the ink and the coloring and the lettering. But other than that, it was him. He wasn't making 6 books a month. He wasn't going all in on all these gimmicks and shit. He was just making comics. And he was making comics that stood out among every other thing. Sure, you look at it and you're like, oh, it's the guise of action extreme 90s books. And then you actually start reading it and you realize just how much there truly is to these series. And that's how I have felt for like the past week when I finally started reading these books. And that is just an incredible revelation. Eventually, he just starts fighting characters that I can only imagine Eric Larson created when he was a kid, just because the amount of villains that are just popping up is just ridiculous. And Savage Dragon just handedly beats all of them. It's that great trope where you want to show how badass this villain is, and like, you gotta have him fight Superman. Have Superman in the issues leading up to it fight some pretty scary guys, but he still beats them. But then you get to the big guy, and Superman cannot handle that. So it's that build-up. And that's sort of what we're getting here. He fights this guy named Cutthroat and Glowbug. There is the classic Dragon House dive where he gets called into a hostage situation. And this is a very confusing scene because it shows that he does have some kind of super strength because he's able to kick himself up off the ground outside of this residential home and then dive and smash through the roof, and then he just starts fucking gunning dudes down. This is a loud scene. If you want to see, if you don't believe me in saying that a comic book can be loud, go and read this scene from Savage Dragon, one of the 3, the early issues in the miniseries, I assume is when this is. It is a loud scene. It's just, especially in black and white, I can't imagine what it's like in color. My God, there must be so much going on. It's just incredible onomatopoeia, sound effects in every panel. They're filling the pages with these fucking things. They're going over the panel borders. They're in the background behind all the characters. Boom, boom, boom. Shit like that. It's the loudest comic book I've ever seen. And it's like something, you would expect that from an Image comic, right? Especially an early Image comic. But this is fucking, it's a masterclass, I'll say, in how to do, if you really want to just emphasize the action, emphasize the chaos of a fight, and a gunfight no less, I would highly recommend you check this scene out. And then we get, of course, the first ever official appearance of Star, a vigilante character that tosses ninja stars. Savage Dragon then continues his crusade, his one-man crusade, because they use him as essentially, they describe Savage... God, I keep saying Savage Dragon. They describe Dragon as a one-man SWAT team, which he pretty much is. You send in the Dragon when it's super freaks and shit that the regular cops are not able to handle. Such as the Arachnid, a horribly disgusting, bulbous meat sack with multiple arms and limbs that lives in the sewers and eats children and fucking has webs of people just lining, fucking going for miles in this giant sewer system beneath Chicago. They outright say he eats kids. So it kind of reminded me of Weasel from the Suicide Squad. Because, you're reading this and you're like, holy shit, this is like... It's crazy action and violence, but it's like a cartoonish level. And then you get to the arachnid part, and it's like... It's just an off comment about the arachnid on like a news report, and it's like... it talks about the arachnid eating and abducting and eating children. And it's like, oh my god. The vicious circle is finally revealed, or sort of foreshadowed. The vicious circle is led by Overlord. Like I said earlier, they're kind of the cartel that runs Chicago's underworld and upper world for the most part, because they're Super Patriot. Now, Super Patriot is the quintessential patriotic, flag-caped 1940s character. He's been a hero since the 40s, I believe, in Larson's world, this 2D dragon alternate universe, pocket verse. And we see how fucked up this world is when Super Patriot has all of his well, we don't see it. We see it in a news report that it happens before. Super Patriot was beaten nearly to death, with most of the bones in his body completely crushed and irrevocably destroyed, which is why he is how he becomes the Super Patriot. I'm sure we all know, the bionic cyborg man who has metal arms and legs and giant guns and wears the mask and just becomes a fucking maniac, similar to the Punisher. In this situation, Dragon is called into a mall hostage situation where members of the Vicious Circle, trying to deal with the Dragon on their own, sort of going behind the back of Overlord. They go to a mall. The members are Hellraiser, Basher, and Mako. Mako, I think, is the longest running character out of those three, because one of them dies off the bat. But Mako's a shark man. They go there and they fucking kill people, and they round up anyone that they can that doesn't escape this indoor shopping mall. And they're like, oh, hey, we'll trade the lives of these people for your super cop. And so Dragon has to show up. And then I just realized that when he rocks up, he does so on a fucking hog of a motorcycle. And one of the cops tells him that his guns he may as well just leave them outside because these guys have bulletproof skin. Or like the guys are bulletproof. So, I'm sure it's just a one-off thing just to make him sound more dangerous. Or this cop just doesn't know any better. Or they were lying to the Dragon to try and screw him over because they were bought out by Overlord. Who knows? Because once Dragon goes inside and gets into a fight, it's insane, because the villains, the freaks, they just start fucking chucking people, like picking them up, like the hostages who they told to like stay here, like stay on the ground and don't move. They start picking them up and fucking just throwing them at Dragon, and he's yelling at these people to go limp, and he's trying to fucking catch as many of them as he can, like he's playing human football. And there's people just splattering against the fucking floor, breaking their necks and shit. It's horrible. But then who should show up but the Super Patriot? Kitted out as a horrible cyborg mutation monster. And he just immediately, bam, shoots Basher in the fucking head. So either, I'm sure that it's not a normal bullet. Is what I'm getting at. That's why I brought up their bulletproof thingy. Because the guy immediately shows up and shoots him. And he's dead. The other two get brutalized and fucked up, Mako and Hellraiser. And then Dragon also gets fucked up by Super Patriot, who has, inhuman strength because his arms are metal. And he nearly kills Dragon because he thinks that he's part of it. This story really does... The comic deals a lot with bigotry, racism through Dragon. People don't like him because he's a freak. And he's big and green and monstrous. He's a big green monster with a big fin on his head. He looks like a shark alien or something. So that's a big issue that he does have to deal with. All right. I'm back after a 15-minute fucking hiatus because this dumb cunt at the apartment complex that I live at decides that he needs to fucking sit and idle in his loud-ass, unmuffled, fucking shitty little white Honda whatever the fuck with a little spoiler on the back. Fuck me, man. I hate that cunt. There's two of them that fucking do it. God almighty, they piss me off. So, super fucking patriot shows up and he starts whooping Dragon's ass and he nearly kills him until he learns that he's a cop. And then he, like, almost self-destructs. Like, the wires in his brain come cross when he realizes, holy shit, I just beat the ever-loving tar out of a cop. And then he just goes offline, and as the Dragon's partner, who I forgot to mention, is named Officer Alex Wilde. It's really cool to see my last name appear in a comic as a character. She rocks up with a gun, and she's like, fucking put your hands above your head. He's a cop, god damn it. And then Patriot freaks out, and he falls clunk. And then, like, spider legs shoot out of his limbs, his robot limbs, and he unconsciously crawls away and escapes. So that's weird. But it's revealed in the next issue, or the same issue, when we meet Overlord, that Cyber Data, the bad guys from Cyberforce, are in league with Overlord, or at least they were. They were the ones who made Super Patriot, and Super Patriot kind of became a pawn of Cyber Data and, by extension, Overlord. That's why he was sent there, where Dragon was, once Overlord learned about Mako and Hellraiser's plans. But it failed, and Overlord gets super pissed and threatens the Cyber Data CEO guys or whatever. I've never read Cyberforce. Shitty comic, who cares? So yeah, and this is also the Overlord reveal, and it's also the appearance of Bedrock, aka Bad Rock, or a Youngblood member. He's a teenage boy who turned into a giant rock man. He appears, and it's after Dragon finally gets out of the hospital a couple days later, because he has a healing factor, so he heals pretty fast, but once he gets out, he's getting interviewed by news reporters, and he gives them their little, his little spiel, and then he starts heading off, and there's this one reporter who's, like, just trying to follow him out the back, and, like, she's like, hey, give me a story, blah, blah. Then Bad Rock shows up and fucking clocks Dragon in the back of the head and just starts whooping his ass, and they start fighting through the city, just destroying countless amounts of property. And eventually, they get to the waterfront, and Dragon just clocks Bad Rock in the face and sends him launching into, like, the Chicago River. And he starts to leave as, like, a crowd forms, and he's like, oh, god damn it, why do I have to have a conscience? Why can't I be like another Image comic? And so, he's like, the dude's made of fucking rocks. He's gonna sink and die down there. And I'm a cop, so I can't do that. So Dragon dives into the river to save Bad Rock, and what does Bad Rock do? He just slowly floats, looks up at Dragon, who swims towards him and tries to reach out to help, and just punches him in the face. And oh my, does this exhibit the strength of Dragon, because Dragon fucking underwater, no less, picks up Bad Rock, throws him up out of the ocean, or the water, whatever, the river, and then he himself, boom, like a reverse torpedo shooting straight out of the water, goes after him. And they keep fighting some more, and then Dragon just whoops Bad Rock's face in, and lying in the rubble, Bad Rock's like, okay, uncle, I give up. Please, don't hit me. I just wanted to see if you were cool enough to join Youngblood. That's why Bad Rock was there. I highly doubt he did this on the whim of the Youngblood organization. he seemingly did it on his own because Youngblood members later have to come and pick him up from the police station because Dragon arrests him for assaulting an officer and causing countless property damage. And in a way, it kind of felt like some sort of commentary on the comics that they were putting out at this point, because Youngblood was the first comic, and I doubt this was what the intentions were, but you can definitely read it this way, as a commentary on the other Image books and what they are. Where Dragon is actually telling you a story and has story beats, like a beginning, a middle, and an end for each issue, all these other books are just, look at this cool fight. Oh my gosh, he punched him so hard. Wow, I wonder how hard that guy can punch. And that's fucking, Dragon is just talking shit about stuff like that the whole issue. Next, we are introduced to a young lady named Debbie Harris, who I think is like a 18-year-old college girl who lives with her mother because she can't afford to move out on her own. She lives in the apartment across the way from Dragon at his apartment complex. We are also introduced to Johnny Redbeard's next man. Johnny Redbeard will come in to play, and later at some point in this, he is a parody and way for Larson to shit on John Byrne, and I am all for that. I vehemently hate John Byrne. He is a piece of shit. He is a bigot. He's racist. He is just an all-around terrible individual, and I've never cared for his comics. There you go. But I am always glad to see John Byrne being made fun of. This also marks the date as being 2 years since Dragon was found. So I think if I don't know what year this starts in, because the Image started in 92, so I'd have to assume that the first bits of stories were in 1990, and now it's, actual time, 92 or so would have to make sense based on this. Or maybe 90, maybe he was found in 89 and then 91, because I think that there's another, about a year, maybe 6-month time skip after this. But in the years since Dragon was found, oh wait, I'm sorry, I'm getting out of whack here with my notes. Okay, so I forgot to mention something. Debbie, that little girl, that doesn't sound good. Debbie, that girl, the 18-year-old girl that lives across the hall, she gets in like some big fight with her horrible mother. And she's crying in the hallway one night when Dragon comes home from fighting whatever freaks was out. And she's like, please, can I spend the night with you? Like, can you just, I don't have anywhere else to go. My mother's a psychopath. And Dragon lets her in reluctantly. And then they bang. And the next morning, there is a knock at the door. The doorbell rings at the apartment. And Dragon's getting ready. He's like shaving, and she's like, "Oh, you should grow out a mustache. You look really good with a horseshoe mustache." And Dragon's like, okay. And so she goes and gets the door, just because she's being nice, I guess. And as soon as she opens the door, a bullet goes straight through her head, and then the man who shot her sends a bullet through his head. It is a murder-suicide that happens within a page flip. And it's fucking insane how fast it goes. It's this docile scene of these two people who just had a one-night stand, and they're just making like chit-chat and just hanging out and getting ready for their days. And then she's dead. And we would later learn that Debbie's mother called her ex, who is a psychopath, and told her that she went over to the neighbor's apartment. The ex then got his gun and went to Debbie's Dragon's apartment, ready to shoot Dragon. Instead, Debbie answered the door, and he just opened fire as soon as the door moved. Seemingly, he realized what he did and killed himself. Holy fuck. God damn. And then it cuts to the funeral, and then it's it's like I said, it's like a months later. I can't remember how many months. I'll just say 6 months later. So I'll say we're in 1992 at this point. Dragon has, in that time, also in his time, doing stuff in Chicago, he's also being sent by Lieutenant Frank Darling. I should mention he's still in the book. He shows up sporadically, or, well, pretty often. Frank, I think, sort of incentivizes Dragon to start working across the country to help other cities with their super freak problems. One of the freaks that Dragon fights is named the Shrew, who is this horrible rat man. It's a shrew. But we also establish that in the 2 years since the last part, that Dragon and Frank have grown apart, and they've grown distant. Dragon doesn't trust Frank. He thinks there's something going on. And that is because he is correct. You remember Frank's cousin who had the warehouse and that little shipyard and how it blew up? Frank is the one who sent those super freaks after his cousin because he thought that if Dragon saw the plight of the common man and what they have to deal with, the police and the people of Chicago, that he would join up to help them. What he didn't foresee is the freaks blowing the place up and killing everybody. Hellraiser learned that Frank was in on it, in a way, and has been using that to blackmail him for the past 2 years to make Dragon go after, not just leave the city entirely, or the state, but to also go after rival gangs in Chicago and leave the vicious circle alone. And Dragon is just pissed off, And he's like, there's just fucking something going on with Frank. He's been weird the past 2 years. We've just been growing far apart. He used to be my best friend. There's also been Mighty Man sightings. I forgot to bring up Mighty Man. Mighty Man is another thing of that Watchmen light that I brought up earlier. Mighty Man, he's, for all intents and purposes, Captain Marvel Shazam. Except this version, spoiler alert, is not one well, I guess that's what Captain Marvel Shazam is. Never mind. But Mighty Man was a 64-year-old guy whose secret identity was released to the public, and then he was savagely beaten half to death in his house, similar to Night Owl in The Watchmen, the original Night Owl. And the guy who was Mighty Man died in the hospital 2 years ago. This happened around the time Dragon was found. And fucking Super Patriot was almost killed as well. But now, 2 years later, there have been sporadic Mighty Man sightings. What's going on with that? Then we also get Dragon with the chainsaws. That, I feel, famous art of him fighting with chainsaws versus the Shrew. And Sin City 100% was coming out around this time because this section is just highly influenced by Sin City. Dragon has the fucking bandages all over his face and everything. Eventually he gets sent to a rundown section of Chicago called the Underground, where he meets two freaks named Barbaric and Ricochet. Ricochet is this tiny petite girl who can ricochet her body. Her body is made out of some sort of rubber, and so she bounces around. She's kind of like Cannonball from the New Mutants. Barbaric is a giant Native American guy who's a couple years older than her. And it's kind of a cloak and dagger situation where they're these two young people who are been ostracized by their families and their homes, and so they've just been traveling, and they sort of live in squalor. But he's just this giant Native American guy, kid who looks like orc or goblin, but he's massive. He's bigger than Dragon. Dragon not that tall. He's only about 5'10" or so. But he's a giant dude. We also get the introduction of Dart, who is the newest super cop on the scene. She is brought on by Captain Stewart of the Chicago PD to act as the super cop when Dragon is sent away. Because what's been happening the past 2 years is Dragon gets sent to some other assignment, not in Chicago, and the Chicago police are powerless to do anything. Dragon, also, I should point out, is away at this point. That's why Dart's introduced right now. He's in New York, NYC, the Big Apple, trying to help the police department deal with something that they're calling the Gargoyle. And who should he run into but the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? There is a TMNT crossover in this issue because at the time Image was publishing TMNT. Eric Larson was heading that for the most part, I think. And so they help Dragon defeat the Gargoyle. They destroy it. They have a big fight on the rooftops with it. It's this giant dragon-esque gargoyle. And it's like, there's this reveal that there's this evil woman who's actually controlling it magically or something like this. And the turtles are like, there's something else going on here. I think we should look into this more. We feel like it might be magic-based. And Dragon just laughs in their face. Like, magic doesn't exist, you silly little turtles. And he's like, it's done. I'm fucking going back to Chicago. He leaves. And Mighty Man also makes his first ever appearance. He returns. He helps... Well, I might be getting ahead of myself here, I think. Am I? No. So, Dart is sent onto an assignment to stop some gang activity. And she gets a bit in over her head. I should point out, she throws darts. She's like kind of like Bullseye, but with darts. So she gets in over her head and gets pretty fucked up. Star makes an appearance again. He comes back and he's trying to help her out like he was just in the area. He's also implied to be a celebrity named Peter Clapton, who seemingly is the billionaire playboy, philanthropist, actor, singer-songwriter who is secretly in his off time the superhero Star. But they both get in over their heads. They get fucked up a little bit, and Mighty Man swoops in. I think it's a jailbreak happens. So a jailbreak occurs. A bunch of villains get out. Dart and Star try to stop them. They're underpowered. Mighty Man swoops down. Everybody freaks out. Mighty Man picks up Dart and Star and flies away. And then Dart's like, "What the fuck are you doing? Go back and stop them." And Mighty Man says, "I can't," and then flies away. There's also, at the end of this issue, something called the Fiend, which is a demonic presence that possesses one of the accountants in the police department into killing Dragon as some sort of monstrous form. And that's a brief fight that happens in this issue for some reason. And then at the end, we also continue the whole Frank Dragon thing by revealing that Alex is also in on it in a way. She's in the Dragon camp. Like Alex Wilde has become Dragon's confidant, whereas Frank used to be, and they definitely suspect that something's up with Frank. Finally, a super cop team is formed called Freak Force. They're made up of Horridus, who is a weird dinosaur hedgehog woman with spikes and all over her body. Barbaric, Ricochet, eventually, because she is like 15 or something, and Barbaric is like 18, I think, is the age difference. It's a couple years. So she legally can't, they don't want her on there because she's a minor. Dart is also there. And Rapture. Rapture has like, I think she has like she has electricity powers of some sort, and she's very flirtatious with Dragon. I wonder where that's gonna go. But that super cop team is formed, and it is dubbed the Freak Force. Dragon also spots Mighty Man at this point. Like he just sees like a glimpse of Mighty Man flying over the city, and he's like, "Oh, what did I just see?" And we also introduce, we introduced this earlier in the series, are introduced to this, Mrs. Schwartzblatt, who is this elderly woman, which is just purely Larson drawing Aunt May. You know, the fucking horrific thin, pale flesh stretched over a deformed skull. Version of Aunt May. She's introduced when when Dragon makes his first public appearance to the press. She sees it on television, and she thinks it's her estranged son, who looks pretty goddamn similar to Dragon. And he also had a green mohawk when he was younger in this photo that she has of him. I wonder who that is. I wonder if that's who Dragon is. Is Dragon really her son? No, she's not. No, he's not. They're not related at all. But she comes back into this. She goes to Chicago specifically to find him, and she like has a breakdown in the police department lobby, and Dragon's like, "Lady, I'm not dealing with this. I'm not your son. Please leave." And then we get a really emotional scene with Dragon and Frank. Once Frank is like, I don't know where he's at. I think he's like in a parking garage or something, I want to say, of the police department maybe, or somewhere, I don't know. And he's getting like held up by the collar by a villain, and they're making threats to him, like I can't remember what it is specifically, but it's stuff that Frank isn't powerful enough in the police force to take care of, that they want done. So he's like, "What do you want me to do, man? I can't. I don't have, like, I'm not in charge of the Freak Force. That's Captain Stewart's thing. I have no say in the matters. I can't do anything." And the guy's about ready to just smash his face in when Dragon punches through the wall and kicks the villain's shit in. And he's like, "Frank, what the fuck is going on? Your wife has left you. You've been like just a wreck. I don't know when the last time is you showered. You look horrible. Like, what's going on, man?" And it's this emotional scene where Frank reveals everything that happened the past 2 years. You know, what he did, how he has been getting blackmailed, how the freaks of the Vicious Circle fucking broke his pregnant wife's leg like a year ago. How she left him. And then Dragon puts his hand on his shoulder and he's like, "Frank, I'm going to help you out. You're my best friend." And I wish that we could have seen more of that. I'm sure we get to see plenty of it in the issues coming, but it's just, because, especially because of the time skip, I don't blame it, for happening, but I hope that we do see more of Frank and Dragon's relationship. And finally, at issue 6, Freak Force takes on a new gang calling themselves the Annihilators. They're led by Cyberface, who is leading this new crew they're from the jailbreak before, a couple issues prior. And they take on the Annihilators, this ragtag team, and they are not doing well. Tell you that. Dart has been in legal trouble because one of the super freaks is suing the city because she darted him. So the police captain and the council, or whatever they're called, that are in charge of like the precincts, they don't want her using darts anymore. And so she gets just pissed off in this fight, and she's like, "Fuck this, we're all about to die," and she just starts darting guys, like she fucking gets them in both eyes, and like right in the throat, like all like just boom, 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 right where you don't want things stabbing you in the throat, she just pinpoints it perfectly. And Barbaric is trying to, he accidentally kills a dude because he's not properly trained. They just fast forwarded him through fucking police training, and he's just an untrained teenager. So he kills one of these guys. Horridus, the little spiky girl, she doesn't know what the fuck she's doing. She almost gets killed. Dragon's kicking dudes' faces in. Rapture is like, "I am way over my head here. Holy shit, this is madness." And who should appear but Mighty Man? He officially makes his presence known, and Dart's like, "I fucking told you so, asshole," because Dragon just does not believe her. And she's also becoming, Dart, a little villainous. But Mighty Man helps them stop all this and take down the gang. The gang members run off to like this teleportation device that they've constructed, and they try to escape, but Barbaric chases them down, and he smashes the controls, and it explodes, seemingly killing them forever. After that, pretty bad PR for the Freak Force. And they make some changes, such as, Dart can't use darts. They're going to put Barbaric back through more training. And they also want to make sure that the team are wearing actual police uniforms. Dragon wears police uniform. He wears the blue shirt and the pants. Like right there or so. But the others just wear their weird costumes. It doesn't work very well. Dart, she's a very nimble and agile fighter, so she's restricted in these police outfit. Horridus, she's covered in spikes. Barbaric, they somehow make one big enough for him. And they don't appreciate all the changes that are happening. They don't like what's going on. They don't want to do this anymore, and the Force disbands. There's a change in this world that's happening where freaks are becoming fairly well-liked for the most part. They're getting there. They're like, oh, well, hey, maybe these freaks can actually do something good for once instead of just being criminals that society hates. And they disband. And Dragon is once again alone in the world. He doesn't really have Frank, because of all that. Oh, oops. He doesn't really have Frank. He doesn't have the team anymore. This team of people that, it's very brief, but he at least had people that are similar to him, understand him better. For the most part, people who are similarly powered, I guess. And the issue ends with Cyberface, former member of the Vicious Circle, squealing on Overlord. Uh-oh. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Comic Shtick Podcast. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you ever read Savage Dragon, do you dig it? Do you hate it? Let me know. If you haven't read it in a while, I highly suggest it. It's really good. What do you think of Alien Romulus, the Marvel 1943 game? Acolyte? You excited for more Star Wars? I am. And, I will see you all next week. Bye.